Oh, hello, my blind little bats.
Oh my god.
If you did not already know, I do already have a whole video which I think covers a lot of like the staples that you should know before you move out on your own. But in this video, I'm going to share with you things that I still think are really important, but I'm just letting you know they're kind of random. They're less organized because I gave a lot of information in the first one. I don't know how much else you want from me. And the first thing is to confirm the date that your rent is due and figure out if you are being prorated if you move in on any other date other than that date. So when I moved into my first apartment, moved in like the middle of the month. And so in the first video, when you watch it or if you've watched it, I mention, I think it's important to just confirm when your rent is due because I wasn't even really sure. I just forgot to ask and it's something that I always wondered but like didn't want to bother the guy about. They tried to evict me. Okay, the reason why it's important to know when this is due is for situations just like this when they try to kick you out of your home. I had no discussion about prorating. If you do not know what prorating is or a prorate, what that means is, say I were to move in on the 13th, they should give you a discounted or a different rate based off of how many days that you're going to move in there before when rent is due. So to give you a little example, I moved in on the 13th and rent was due on the 1st. So of that month, he should have given me a different rate for the first month. So let's say the difference between the 13th and the 31st, and then done the math on how much my rent was. So I would be paying him a different amount than my total months, if this is making sense. Hopefully this is making sense for you. If not, but because he did not do that and I am a simple child that did not ask for the due date of my rent, I was just paying on the 13th. I didn't know when it was due, so I just made sure he had the money well before I had lived there for over a month. Don't do this, kids. Because I was trying to turn in my rent early, because I thought it was due on the 13th, a lot of the time it was coming in on like the 4th and the 5th, and apparently homeboy just thought that I turned my rent in late all the time, when in reality it was very early. He didn't really care because he's like an older, wealthier gentleman and never said anything. So I never said anything. None of us knew anything. And then one day he had a different guy taking over for that dude and then snuck an eviction notice under my door. And yeah, it was worked out. It was just fine. We had a conversation where that man realized everything made sense and it was fine. When I moved out of that place, I got a thank you note for living there. That's how good of a tenant I am. I get thank you notes for renting places, okay? But yeah, that's my dumb story. Make sure that you know when your rent is due. If you do get things prorated, make sure that you have this all written down. Okay, cool. Number 2. When you know you're looking to move, I really recommend, even if you just live in like a bedroom or something, start packing as early as you can. Every time that I've moved, I have gotten boxes from a business. So when I moved from Michigan to Oregon, I fortunately worked at a restaurant where they're getting in a lot of large boxes anyways, and they just recycle them when they're done. So I just asked like, hey, can I take a couple of these home? No one cares, perfect. And this way I was able to just get a couple really nice like moving boxes for the free and just pack things like books, or like if it's summer, pack your winter clothes that you're not gonna be needing for a little while, or just whatever it is that you know you're not really gonna need. I would just really recommend just like organizing this and getting this all ready beforehand. Otherwise what ends up happening is you just end up throwing crap in boxes. You don't have enough boxes, so you're having to buy bins. It's just like a whole ordeal that no one wants. Number 3, speaking of boxes, save these tiny boxes. As soon as you think like within the next year or two, I'm gonna be moving, I really recommend saving a couple of these. So this one is decorative. This is just a small box that I got from a Sugarfina candy thing. But these make for really good drawer organizers, especially when it's your first apartment and you're poor. And if you're not poor, I have a Ko-Fi, donate to it, thank you. I still use these all the time. This is like, I think a jewelry box that I got, also keeps all of my bar stuff in it. Are they the cutest things in the world? No. Are you gonna put this on Instagram? Not necessarily, but you know what? If you're the only one going into this drawer, what does it matter? First of all, it reuses things, it's better for the environment. Secondly, it's free, it will save you money, and especially when it is your first apartment. I just feel like drawer organizers and stuff like this, when you do have an option such as this is much better than putting money into that, because again, it's just, if this is your first place, there's so many other places you could put money that I would really recommend doing that. But another reason these are great is because if this is your first apartment and then you buy drawer organizers for every single one of your drawers in this apartment, that doesn't necessarily mean that that they are going to fit in your next one. Speaking of making your place fancier, there are 3 things I think that you can do in pretty much any apartment that will make a gigantic difference in just the decor and overall feeling. And these are your shower head, any knobs or drawers in like your kitchen or your bathroom or really anywhere, and light bulbs. But with all 3 of these things, I would really recommend when you remove them, keep all of the old ones. This is something that I really like to do, especially for your first apartment, because these are all first of all, pretty affordable. I think I talked about changing out your shower head in my first apartment video, but this one I have taken into 4 different places that I've lived now, maybe just 3. But you just really want to make sure that you keep the old one so that if you do go to move to a new place, you can just pop that in there and keep it and take it with you. Next tip, if you are not someone that cooks, first of all, get it together and like buy a cookbook, okay? I have so many videos on this. You're gonna be fine, sweetie, you're gonna be fine. But if you are not, I would really recommend when you start off buying spices, buy them from like a snooty grocery store. Like I think even Whole Foods, you can buy spices in whatever amount that you want, which is very convenient for A, just not wasting a bunch of spices, and B, just saving you a little bit of money. Because sometimes when you are trying to cook and you are trying out a new recipe, if it calls for just like 1/4 teaspoon of some really random spice that you know because you don't cook a lot that you're not gonna use a whole ton of, again, if you can't just go to a store and buy like a teaspoon of it, then you know you're pretty good for the next couple times. Even if you are someone that does cook a lot, I think this is just a good tip for, again, spices that you're not gonna use that often, or just like also finding out the spices that you do use pretty often. Like if you find yourself constantly going into a Whole Foods to buy basil, you know you probably should just go to Costco and buy basil. Next, when looking for a place, I don't think I made this clear enough in my first video, is I would really recommend looking beyond like Zillow or whatever those apartment finders are. I have so many friends now, because I'm popular, what can I say, that used, which is totally fine, obviously. How else are you gonna know unless you watch these great videos by yours truly? They've used like just the online apartment finder websites to find their apartments. And the only thing with that is what ends up happening a lot of the time is they're picking places like out in the middle of nowhere. And they're paying a lot of money for it, and it's not that great of a space. And then when we're talking about prices, we find out like they're paying more than me, who lives literally in the heart of the most expensive area in this whole city, and I have a lot more space than them, and overall just like my place a lot more. Not to just be like I'm great and they're not, but I'm just saying the difference is I found mine on Craigslist. Now, don't be stupid, be safe with all of this, but what I'm saying is when you are looking, always have someone check it out. Don't ever give someone money on the internet. Don't do it until you have a lease in your hand and it is like a confident, like you confirmed everything, nothing feels sketchy. Do not give anybody any money, ever. I don't care what kind of deal they're telling you. Don't give people money on the internet, okay? Just don't, except for me and that Ko-Fi we talked about. But I just cannot stress enough, like, I know it's really hard, especially if you are moving across the country or to a whole new place that you've never been. And again, that first video I talk about tips, like really look into the area, even if it is just like Google Maps, looking into areas, but like look at what's going to be around you. And this also kind of brings me into my next tip of thinking about like transportation when you're picking your place. So I didn't really think about this a whole ton before I moved, but I really wanted a place that I could just walk to everything. I hate driving. I lived in Michigan in the middle of nowhere where like to get anything you have to drive at least 10 minutes to do so. Now, if you like this kind of life, that's great. Then like keep that in mind. You know, everything is its personal preference. It doesn't matter to me. I don't even know who you are. Stranger danger, speak of the devil. But I think it's important to consider your transportation when you are picking the area that you're gonna live in. So when I moved to Oregon, I was living with my sister, which again, I appreciate 100%, but she also kind of lived out in the middle of nowhere, and it was fine because I was used to driving around a whole ton. But I noticed once I did move into my own place, which was in more of a city, I could walk to everything that I needed to. I didn't really need to drive a whole ton. I loved it. Like, it was just a very important aspect of finding my own place, was just like, what's gonna be around you? How are you gonna get around? Like, I love taking public transportation. So if you are someone else who likes taking public transportation, or you obviously have to because you don't own a car or whatever it is, I would really keep this in mind. Same thing if you are someone who, like, I grew up near Chicago, and I know a couple people that grew up in Chicago and drove, but I think they're maniacs personally. Sorry, still love you. What you crazy? They just dealt with the parking. Like, have you ever been to Chicago? It's insane. So I'm just saying, if you're someone who's like, okay, I'm gonna move to New York or Chicago or a place like that where it's a much more major city, you might wanna die if your only mode of transportation is by car. So I would really just consider that when you're picking your place is like, okay, if I'm not gonna use a car, how am I gonna get groceries? How far away is the nearest grocery store? If I want ice cream at 3 a.m., how far do I have to go? And is it safe to do so? I'm just saying, these are serious problems. And next up, if you are looking for roommates, especially in a city that you don't currently live in or you don't know anything about, is looking into Facebook groups. I know, Facebook is trash. Everybody hates it. Yeah, Facebook. You heard me, you're trash. But you do have to give it to those groups. They're kind of useful sometimes. I've found some good things on there, I'm just saying. And the next tip, this is not super apartment related because it very much depends on your credit card, but before you go to move out, before like, honestly, just like right now, just do this. And that is to check your credit card benefits. Because I know for like pretty much any credit card, like all of mine have this, is they will give you like car rental insurance. So as long as your credit card does have this, when you go to rent a car, just deny the insurance because your credit card will come with it and then you're covered if something does happen. Again, obviously make sure that this is true and valid, but that alone could save you quite a bit of money right there. So I'm just saying, if you are going to move and you do need to rent a car, most credit cards do come with the insurance included. And also sometimes you get other points for that. Like there's all kinds of things there. Like even if you're using like a U-Haul, I have no idea. That's what I mean. I don't really know because I don't know what your credit card is because that would be too personal. But I am just saying a lot of the time this comes with extra benefits. So I would just look into this before you try to go out and flap free and wild in the world. And the last tip, this is my final real weird one. Especially if the apartment that you're looking in is in like an old house or it's if it's just like a building that wasn't really meant to be apartments, I would ask about the electricity. So the reason I'm saying this is because in my last apartment, my electric blew far too often. I was constantly nervous about like plugging like this light in. It constantly made me nervous. I would unplug every other thing. Like in my apartment, you couldn't control the heat. And so I got a little heater to try and heat up my space. Blew the whole thing. So I'm just saying, if you are looking into an older place, I would just ask to see like how much watts can this handle? Is it like within everybody in the building or is it mine specifically? And if it is mine specifically, how do I fix it? Or are you comfortable with that? Like just go over questions like worst case scenario, what happens? Just like find out, because not having electricity because it's now 9 p.m. and you feel uncomfortable calling your landlord until the next morning is obnoxious. But I think that is everything for this video. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you all enjoyed. I promise you your homes are gonna be beautiful and wonderful. And if not, call me, I guess. But yes, that is everything. Go have a cup of coffee. I need some. Not that you could tell. And walk your dog and have a nice day. Bye, thank you for watching.